Now, possibly The Greatest Alchemist is not an amazing, or I would even say a great isekai. I would say it's pretty good. And it's definitely not the best, whether you're going to watch it this season or probably this year, but there is an element about the show that I really, really enjoy, probably more so than a lot of people. And I do think the show is probably at its absolute best when it embraces the more silly aspects of the show, whether that's being a straight up parody or whatever they're doing, like in last week's episode. It's still funny nonetheless. But there's elements about the modernization that this man Takumi is applying to the world. And I'm not saying it's the first time we've seen this. You can look at stuff like An Ascendance of Bookworm, even Reincarnated as a Slime does a lot of similar ideas. But I appreciate how they're handling it because at face value, our boy's just kind of doing stuff. He's like, hey, people want me to make a bunch of toilets. Sure. And then as we see when we focus on other characters, other nations, other cities or whatever are going to take notice of that and be like, hey, what the hell? And I think my favorite part of this episode is when you see this one adventurer come back. So, left with his party to go hunt a bunch of animals, do his thing. Came back early. Oh shit, you done already? No, we found one of these early, so we had to bring it back. Well, I had to bring it back so it wouldn't spoil. That right there. The fact that we're in a world that just got introduced to the concept of refrigeration because our boy made a fridge. And the idea that so many little things could change in such, life-changing and altering ways. Like, this man could easily, especially because of how he designed the fridge in this world, could easily make portable freezers and could make hunting and stuff like that completely different. They'll be able to stay out far longer, go much further. But in return, it could also bring a lot of eyes that will say, what the hell? And given that we're building in this insane story that we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but the goddess hooked us up and gave us tutorial mode, we are a year out from when things are going to hit the fan. And given the foreshadowing of this episode, shit's going to get bloody. So they got a lot going for it. I think it recognizes what it is and what it can do. And so far, I don't think the show has really stepped on its own toes or tried to do too much that it can't actually accomplish by the end of a season or an arc, and I like that. Now, of course, if you want to support my work and see my full thoughts on these episodes, we do got the Patreon where we got full live reactions available exclusively if you're so interested. So I'm liking this one. I think it's a fun Wednesday watch. I think this, alongside ReZero when it starts up soon, is gonna be a good time. And overall, I like the show, man. It's kind of a comfort show. It's definitely on the lower end of my list this season of all the shows I'm watching, but that's not me saying it as necessarily an insult. It's just this is a really good season with a lot of really exceptional shows, and this one just feels like a good show. And there's a moment, now this is going to sound more like an insult at first, but I actually mean it more as a compliment, but also just acknowledging it didn't look that great. The production when they fought the trees, it was very slideshowy. It was very avoiding movements, and honestly, the faces on the trees were derpy as hell. Intentionally, I think. I mean, the boss tree, literally looked like it rode on the slow bus. But yeah, it was silly looking. But here's the thing. Despite it clearly not being great production, it didn't look ugly. And I think that's what a lot of these shows, the reason we have so many issues when the production's more bad. Now, granted, depending on the fandom, they'll bitch about anything. I mean, some people unironically try to tell me that Ubo Blot looks ugly, but I digress. But the idea that the character models remained pretty much what you expect from the show. Yes, they were sliding, but it wasn't like we're looking at these disgusting 3D blobs or this janky animation. Yeah, you could tell it was off, but at the very least, it didn't do what a lot of these shows do, where it's abysmal to look at. You're like, God, what 3D monstrosity did they try to salvage? I think the show, even when it's at its worst visually, or even when it's at its worst when it comes to the narrative or characterization or whatever else they're doing, it's fine. And maybe that just says I'm just easy to please, but there's a lot of shows I really don't like that era season, which is why you don't see videos on them. I just kind of wish, and I'm gonna beat this horse so dead, but when you look at what happened to a show like The Newgate, if it just did what this episode did, I wouldn't have had those same issues. It's kind of interesting just how much the MC doesn't give a shit. And I'm not sure if it's because the author didn't really think it through, or if it's just meant to be funny, but either way, I find it funny. This man has an arachnid humanoid hybrid. And the first couple of times people discovered her, I was like, well, they kind of came to his home. I get it. This man rolls up to a guild and says nothing. We got no explanations, but we saw a couple dozen people behind him just looking at her petrified. Like, what the What? At some point, she's probably gonna evolve a second time, and I imagine she's gonna be taller. And if so, she's probably gonna be the horse for the monster carriage, because they don't have any of those right now. I assume that's what's gonna happen. And this man's gonna dead ass go through new villages with a spider drawing his carriage. And I guarantee you people are gonna be like, what is that? Yes, there's monsters that do pull carriages in this world, but I doubt any of them have ever looked like her. I did have some people question me, like, oh, did you not like Kumiko's form from Soma Spider So What if you thought her new form's like weird? I was like, no. The difference between, for me, Kumiko from Soma Spider So What like really isn't cute. It was always a spider to me. And when you saw it from like humans' perspectives or like the current day, she looked evil, like monstrous. Like it wasn't like waifu or cute, look at adorable. No, like it was creepy. But because the art style here is like cutesy, I'm like, no, that ain't cutesy. She was less freaky this episode, maybe because I'm getting more used to it. But in general, yeah, like that's my main difference. Is because I don't like Spider Girls to begin with. So, like, if you make them freaky and they're supposed to be monstrous, I'm like, yeah, that works. They creep me out because they're supposed to. When you're like, oh, here's cute girl doing things, I'm like, does anyone have a shoe I can squish her with? Because hell no, man. Get that monster Musume shit out of here. I like her character. It's just, I like it when we focus on, like, the head and then we just ignore the spider. Though you do get some funny moments. At one point, she was kind of climbing on the side of the cart. I was like... I'll give her that. I mean, there's some elements you can do with only that. And I am interested in different modernizations. I do think, and my theory currently is, part of the reason our boy's probably going to find himself in danger is because a lot of his ideas are going to modernize the area he's in. And I think that's going to rise up a lot of evil looking eyes that will probably target him or people surrounding him, because if we can't have what they have, let's take them out before they out-progress us or outpower us, something like that. But either way, I'm still fuzzy on where it's going to go because, you know, the one thing you got to give the show credit, the goddess legitimately hooked us up, gave us good abilities, seemingly legitimately wants to support us, and did the one thing no goddess has ever done, which is give the MC a tutorial mode before shit hits the fan. So, be interesting where they go from here. But let me know what you thought of this episode. I definitely won't say it's like the best episode of the show or it makes the show revolutionary, but there's enough bells and whistles that do have me excited for the future. But your thoughts? Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course, ring that bell, and like I mentioned, full live reactions over on Patreon, and hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. Alright, so today we got Trap Senpai, F Google, Andre, Darthwin Wright, Eric Barton, and the James CR7. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care, and you'll have a good one.